Mics are on. Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for July 20th, 2015. We'll begin with the special order calendar. Continued hearing items. Item number 1, 584, 55 BC, 699 Morris Avenue, the Bronx. Okay, this one.
With this one, it's kind of a long saga. And after all the discussion that we had with the applicant about the site being too small for the third dispenser, granted we were talking about trucks because it was a diesel dispenser, now they show the exact same plan, only now they're saying it's for cars. And my feeling about it is it's still too tight to have a third dispenser, because what about SUVs, which are basically the same size as a truck? And how are you going to prevent large vehicles from using that when you're not going to be able to? So my recommendation is that we close the hearing and vote this out, either to deny or to deny or to approve with only 2 dispensers. And I don't know how we technically handle
You want to approve in part?
plans. What?
You want to approve in part or just approve?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. So either they agree that it's fewer dispensers and then we can vote to grant, or we vote to deny. I mean, we can talk about how we want to do this, but I don't know how clear we had to be over and over and over again. Anybody else comments like that? Not like that?
No, I think that we just have to make sure that they have enough room on the space to maneuver the cars and to not have great many cars or the potential of having a great many cars on the site. So I would be on board with anything that just made that happen. I'm glad to see that they're not doing diesel, which I think will eliminate the truck issue. But I think as long as we can be assured that they're not going to have an overcrowded site, and it might mean having to take another pump away, but if not, I'd be amenable. But my fear was they're just going to be too overcrowded.
I mean, I think that the site is small and it is kind of crowded, and that's why I felt it was important that there not be diesel, because I really don't think that trucks could. I really don't think that trucks could enter onto that site and maneuver. And so limiting it just to the oil truck that's actually replacing the gasoline is the limit of how many trucks should be on the site. As for SUVs, I think that SUVs are smaller and could probably maneuver through the site. Perhaps he should just show us a site plan that shows a larger truck figure, like a larger car figure, and so we can actually visually see whether it will work.
We're talking about on that third dispenser.
On the third dispenser, and just see what it looks like with the larger car moving throughout the site.
So you're not necessarily opposed to the third dispenser. I just thought that our concern was that the car would end up sitting on the sidewalk.
Well, they put bollards in.
Yeah, we've got the bollards.
But it looks like there's only 7.5 feet between the pump and the bollards.
Right.
Which I thought was not a lot of space, because you have to curve in and curve out.
Right, and aren't SUVs wider than 7 feet?
I just, didn't think that was really a lot of room.
Right.
So the question would be, do they have enough room, or do they need more room? Clearly on the right-hand side, can they move it a little bit, move that pump inward?
No,
and still
because they
make
can't get the
clearance?
two.
So
Right.
if they
can't
can't,
get the bypassing cars,
yeah.
so maybe the solution is to have sort of like one island dead center.
Or they could have that island pushed over and you just can't access it from the outside.
From the other side.
You just access it from the left side.
That's true.
But then you mean 3 cars in a row? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you'd
So 3
have a lineup
cars,
of
how do
3
you do that?
cars side by
No,
side.
you would just move that island almost to where the bollards is, so
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
cannot
That it's
pass that
impossible
way.
to
You
get
could-
that way.
Right.
And then you
only
widen up
That's
the
true,
center
yeah,
lane.
it would just be the two lanes in the middle.
And is there an issue about having a pump station so close to the sidewalk? I don't know.
Well,
Thinking about accidents,
yeah.
people who run up sidewalks, things
But if
like
the
that.
bollards are there.
Bollards would be protection.
Yeah,
So, I don't know.
okay, well,
I also had a comment about the signage. According to their plans, they exceed the illuminated signage of 50 square feet on Morris Avenue, but I think they should look at their sign analysis, because the pole signs, they're counting twice, which they don't have to do, so maybe they are in compliance, but the way it's shown now, they exceed it. And it's like 50 square feet per frontage, they're just grouping everything together. Maybe they should show us a signage analysis per frontage.
Item number 2, 16991, I'm sorry.
Just one second.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Item number 2, 16991BZ, 404 Lafayette Street, Manhattan.
Okay, I think the applicant submitted made a really responsive submission that I think responded to all the concerns, and they also amended the drawings to do that, so I'm okay with this. Anyone else?
I'm fine with that.
We're done? Okay. New cases, item number 3, 34041BZ, 7209 Main Street, Queens.
Okay, this one, just a kind of a note that the statement of facts is internally inconsistent. This proposed store is either 350 square feet or 368 square feet, and it keeps going back and forth in the story, so I actually don't know what the right answer is. I rely on others who went on a site visit, but the photos show the perimeter walls of the building and the masonry walls that go around the property, which is block infill of the brick piers that look really shabby, and there's also graffiti on them. I note or observe that prior board decisions required, first of all, a high level of aesthetic, the initial ones, where it said that it would be a brick building and brick piers with picket fencing, and then a later board decision allowed them to replace the picket fencing and block up windows, and it's clear to me that that was a mistake to allow it, because now it looks like really a neglected kind of a site, or let's say poorly maintained site. But we'll go for the site visits. I just finished what I said. I just had there were some photographs showing SJ repair signs next to trees. I don't know if that's the same business, and if they're still there. It looks like maybe they've been removed. And then with respect to the proposal to add a third dispenser, same kind of an issue. So far, it looks like on the diagrams that it creates a lot of conflict with the cars awaiting service and the cars entering to gas up. They should also show how cars on the outside of the pumps enter the site, because they're only showing the inside cars.
Well, I actually did a site visit, and while the graffiti is no longer there, they're patching the graffiti with some gray patch paint that does not match the rest of the paint, so it does make it look shabby, and it's all around that back wall. And also, if you walk along the back wall, it is starting to kind of buckle. So it's not a straight up wall, so I'm a little concerned about the safety for that. I don't know why, but it's definitely starting to slant.
The masonry wall.
The masonry wall is starting to slant a little towards the sidewalk. So if you walk, you can see it. I agree with you. I think that the site is actually kind of cramped for that third pump dispenser, especially considering one of those parking spots is now along that back wall right behind it. I don't think there's enough clearance space for a car to go by while there's a car parked in that space. So I really think they need to dimension that on the plans and show us that it works.
Anybody else?
I agree with the proposed parking location. It's too tight for cars to circulate around the site. And similarly with the signage here, there's a lot of signage they don't include in their signage analysis. There's a lot of excess signage. I believe this is the site that actually even has a dentist sign.
Yeah, I saw that too.
So they have, and then all the pole signs, they're counting twice. So they have to really look at their signage analysis completely again. And I think they should put their landscaping on the plans. They have street trees in the rear. They should add that and anything that's on site.
I agree with everything that's been said, especially about the circulation on the site. I just don't think it works. There's no way to have those cars waiting for service and then be able to drive through and get gas without an
Hitting
accident,
something, yeah.
something happening. And as to the landscaping, I would like them to put some more landscaping in if there are other opportunities, because the original, I think, had a lot more landscaping, especially on that corner now where they sort of have a garbage area or whatever. It would be nice if they could then augment the rest of the site with a little more landscaping and show that on the plan.
Item number 4, 11099BZ, 5658 Kosciuszko Street, Brooklyn. Kosciuszko
Okay,
Street.
this is extension of term and a legalization. Okay, so my comments are just a few. There's bollards that are shown on the photographs. I don't know if you saw that on the site visit, but I'm wondering, do they have DOT approval on those? Those kind of little flex bollards like they have with the bicycles. I didn't see signage compliance submission for compliance with the C1 regs. They also need to repair the broken curbs and sidewalk. But I note also that the request is to legalize an additional entry access, but not an additional curb cut. Meanwhile, you look at the photos and it's clear that there are 2 curb cuts, because it's just that the curb, probably from the weight of all the trucks, is kind of collapsed into the street, and hence you have this sort of de facto curb cut. That's why the sidewalks are all broken. Any other comments?
There are also cars in the street, on the sidewalk,
Right.
like lined
Okay.
up at a 90-degree angle to
Yes.
the site, which is a problem, which is probably why they're stating they wanted to have more lifts. They want to increase the number of lifts in the site, but if you look into the site, there are already about 8 or 9 lifts, and it seems like the lifts go all the way almost to the street. So I don't know where they're going to put these extra 4 lifts, or whether the 4 are actually in place already, so they need to clarify that.
It's a very active site.
Yeah.
It's clear that they've got good business, but it may indeed pose a problem for pedestrians. Who knows how it's really happening.
Yeah, there's actually 3 parts to this building. The third part is not part of this application.
Right.
And that third part looks like it's a car park with lifts. And, my thinking is they should really provide some place for patrons' cars to be parked after they've been serviced, because I figure they drop them off in the morning and pick them up in the afternoon, and between the cars parked on the sidewalk and the double parked cars, it creates congestion. They either could rent a lot or use that third part of the building with the lifts to park cars, but they should develop a plan.
I think it's just overused. I think they just have a lot of business.
Yeah.
I think
they
so,
do.
yeah.
They have a lot of business.
So, but the third part that you're talking about, is that not shown on the plan, right?
No, it's not shown on the
But it
plan.
should be, right?
Well,
Because
that's not part of the
integrated-
original
But is it? Right.
resolution.
Yeah, it is a-
But it's another 1-story garage building.
That's like
It's
30
all-
feet wide.
And it's all painted the same color, and it looks like they all are owned by the same person.
They are.
But it's not part of this application.
Right, but to understand how the place operates, it should be shown. So we
If that's,
can-
if they use it.
If that's theirs.
Unless they
yeah.
just use it for parking during the day,
But also show why it wouldn't be part of the application. I mean, if it's part of their business.
Well, historically, it wasn't part of the original
But
application.
clearly, if
Yeah.
it's being used
But
now.
so,
then
and is it an allowable use then, on the
it's
adjacent
not
site?
I don't know.
That's
I don't
the
see,
It might be a grandfather juice.
yeah, it's a, like how, that's a thing, so are they, that's a thing they need to show that, right? Because if they're really relying on an off-site that's not an allowable use, then,
Right.
okay. Okay.
Okay. Appeals calendar, decision items, item number 5, 27813A, 121 Varick Street, Manhattan.
Okay, with respect to this one, we closed the hearing on May 19th, and at our request, DOB and the appellant have submitted their post-hearing briefs that summarize their arguments, and we'll make our decision tomorrow.
Item number 6, 3715A, 2020 Demarest Road, Queens. Unfortunately, we have not received DEP sign-off.
Right, and there have been no subsequent submissions.
Well, the applicant was waiting to do the plan to make sure that it comported with DET, anything DEP wanted.
DEP,
So it didn't
okay.
make sense to have.
But there were a few things that we
Right,
had
they had to
asked
make
for,
corrections,
they were
right.
supposed to do. In terms of, they didn't fully dimension the yards and things like that, so we don't know. We want to make sure they understand it's not a waiver for side yards,
No, they were
or any yards for that matter. But
Right.
side yards weren't mentioned as an example. So they need to listen to, I don't know if the applicant's here, but they need to listen to our video and make sure that they pick up all of the changes we requested.
So we're
Okay,
deferring.
we defer, yeah.
Zoning calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 7, 19313BZ, 4770 White Plains Road, Bronx.
Okay. This is, so I wasn't here when this started way back in 2013. I find the submission extremely confusing. I reviewed the entire application. The last hearing on this was in January of 2014, after which the continued hearings were adjourned 6 times until November 2014, and then the case was taken off calendar. The issue that was raised a year and a half ago was whether the retail parking was a permitted non-conforming use in the R5. And in response, after all of these months, the applicant submitted some Sanborn maps to show that the tax lot has remained the same since the 1920s, and an illegible copy of 1923 BSA resolution and plan, and 40 pages of unexplained, often illegible prior board materials, all or most of which had been submitted in January 2014 and July 2013. So I don't understand this, and none of it was explained, and the statement of facts wasn't updated, and so I'm not sure what. Maybe it proves what they were trying to prove before, but there's no argument made. And they made the argument a year and a half ago. Why are they making the same exact argument or not, like providing the same materials today? So you can't tell if it's answering the question. With respect to the meat of the issue, with respect to the parking study, typical of all these parking studies, there's no backup for the assumptions. There's a reference to the Pushkarev and Zupan table 2.7. That should be provided along with the other kinds of assumptions, because we can't understand what it is 3% of what, and where does the what come from. With respect, there's a concrete wall, and again, those who want a site visit will speak to this, or if you remember, maybe when a site visit a year and a half ago. The concrete wall and chain link fence surrounding the site are really inhospitable in this R district, and I understand that when it was a Verizon switching station, that you could understand why it might look like that, but now it's supposed to be an office building, and it shouldn't be looking like a fortress. An alternative treatment really does need to be proposed. And then the proposal, because it's to reduce all this parking, includes a lot of double and triple stackers, and most of them are in the R5. I don't understand why they're not pulled tight to the building. And when you look at the section, because the parking lot steps, the triple stackers are still super visible from the residential. So I just think it's really aggressive, and I don't understand why there isn't still parking on the interior of the building, which there was originally. That would solve a lot of the sort of inappropriate amount of parking on stackers in this residence district. And then just a note, there was a set of drawings that was called the Existing Zoning Analysis Z001 that shows 190 spaces required and 108 provided. I don't know what that refers to, because the statement of facts says that there's 26 existing interior spaces and 67 parking lot spaces. So what's the 108? Anybody else? And you might remember this from way back when, a year and a half ago.
I mean, I remember it a year and a half ago, and we kind of got stuck when we talked about whether or not the parking was a legal non-conforming use, and I believe they were supposed to go back to DOB and get a reconsideration, and we never heard from them again, basically. So I feel like you do almost, in that it's like, why did we get this submission and what does it mean? There's no summation. I'm hoping tomorrow we'll get some explanation as to what happened.
And also, at the very least, you're supposed to put that in your statement of facts. I mean, the applicant just stood on their January 2014 statement of facts. It's very elegant. Anybody else? Okay.
Item number 8, 30313BZ, 506 510 Brook Avenue, the Bronx.
They asked to adjourn this.
Item number 9, 9414BZ, 1150 East 22nd Street, Brooklyn.
Okay. Okay, with this one, I do really appreciate the responsiveness of the architect to our concerns. They revised the plans as requested to set back the second and third floors to create a 24-foot rear yard. So I'm okay with this after a lot of iterations, and I do appreciate the changes.
No, I agree. I think it was very responsive, and I'm fine with the solution. Looks good.
I agree. Okay.
Item number 10, 9814BZ, 404 Richmond Terrace, Staten Island.
They asked to adjourn this.
Item number 11, 18214BZ, 1977 Homecrest, Brooklyn.
Okay. So in the course of reviewing this, there was some discussion about whether the board has the authority to reduce the total combined side yard requirements of 13 feet when they're complying to begin with. And the statement of facts here argues in favor of allowing that reduction in total side yard width. And they cite to a BSA case from 2011, which held that a 5-foot side yard on its own is a complying side yard condition, but which also held that the reduction of the complying side yard from 8 feet to 5 feet, so from a total of 13 feet to less than 13 feet, may be warranted in certain cases and when there is compliance with all of the special permit findings, and that the surrounding conditions in the subject case are distinguishable from other cases with standard lot depths of 100 feet, which allow for a larger building footprint. So in that case, in 2011, the board did allow that reduction in combined side yards because it found special circumstances. But the board concluded that when one side yard has a non-complying width of less than 5, it would require that a second side yard have a width of at least 8, except in certain instances when a side yard with a width of less than 8, but at least 5 would be appropriate. So the question that's presented to me by providing that case, which I was unaware of, is that it has to be appropriate. So, so the statement of facts in this case argues that the 20-foot rear yard and reduced side yard are appropriate as to neighborhood character, but the map that was submitted of side yard and rear yards and the photos show that on the property to the north, towards Avenue S, there is a 5-foot side yard, and where the proposed extension would be located, there's a 30-foot rear yard. On the property to the south, toward Avenue T, there is a side yard in excess of 8 feet and a 29-foot rear yard. The properties to the rear of the site also have deep rear yards of at least 27 feet. The 2-story structure at the rear of the adjacent property may have a building ID number, but it doesn't have a CO. I don't know if it was ever filed, so we haven't seen the approved drawings. We don't know whether it or the second story were built pursuant to permit. I note that there is a stop work order on that property for operating a business in the garage, so it doesn't make me feel that comfortable about the construction to begin with. We also spoke at the last hearing of the proposal to reduce the existing undimensioned but otherwise complying side yard to 2 feet due to a small, just 8-foot extension at the front. In any event, I don't see where there's a 3-foot side yard that's shown on the alternate proposal version. I don't know where that comes from, since the survey shows a 2-foot deep portion for the 8-foot extension.
We had
And-
asked them to do that.
What? Sorry?
We had asked them to do that.
To 3 feet?
Yeah, because there's an 8-foot distance between buildings required.
Ah,
So the
okay.
other one.
But
So the
then-
other yard has a 5-foot side yard.
Okay.
So we said,
Okay, I see. But
Try to do it, yeah.
I actually don't understand how we can do any of that, how we have the authority to do that under this. And I don't see that, how you can reduce the side yard to 2 feet or 3 feet when you've only got a little bump that's reducing the side yard. Because I thought the whole idea is that you take an existing non-complying side yard and you extend it, not that you create an entire non-compliance with the existing building. It's supposed to be that the existing building is non-compliant and you extend. And I also don't think they've made a case for the 20-foot rear yard or the reduction of the side yards to a point of non-compliance. What they could make a case for is a reduction in the rear yard, and certainly they're asking for more floor area. It's not like there's not a lot of opportunity here, but I don't think they've made a case for side yard reduction to the level of non-compliance or 20-foot rear. Anybody else? Sorry to go on. But they raised a case, so then the case didn't help them.
The points for trying.
Okay.
Item number 12, 231-14BZ, 124 West 23rd Street, Manhattan.
Okay, with this one, we were going to adjourn because they were supposed to have gotten a lot of work done and they didn't. We did just in passing say that they provided sound and vibration testing from both the owner and the buildings rep, and they're still working on mitigation measures, but let's just say they're 3 months behind the schedule that we had set for them. So we'll adjourn and see what happens.
Item number 13, 264-14BZ, 436 East 149th Street, the Bronx.
Okay, and this one, we'll have to reopen to receive a revised DOB objection, which we received.
It's on for continued, we don't have to read.
We reopened it, I think, on the 23rd. That's why it's on continued, but we can now close and vote on this because we received the objection.
Oh, okay. Item number 14, 319-14BZ, 1781 South Avenue, Staten Island.
This one is a little bit kind of a strange thing. So Commissioner Montanez, in her never-ending search for the truth, found that the architect for this had been banned from filing before the DOB, and in response to that, and so we said, well, we can accept the drawings for information, but they can't be the applicant, the architect for the applicant. The applicant submitted a copy of the DOB list of professionals who have surrendered privileges, showing this architect surrendered their professional certification, but not their filing privileges. But then they also confusingly submitted an ECB violation that was dismissed that stated that the architect had filed a material false statement with the DOB and had voluntarily surrendered filing privileges.
well, that's what I based my question on.
Yeah.
I saw that ECB violation, but they're saying that's been dismissed, and it wasn't all filing privileges, it was only,
Right.
The ECB
Professional.
violation,
What?
the ECB violation actually had very little bearing on the
Yeah,
voluntary
that's what-
surrender. That was, I think, submitted in error.
Okay, that's what I think too, because the violation is for the information that was provided. The filing privilege surrender is a way to cure the violation, doesn't mean you get your filing privileges back now that the violation on the property is dismissed.
Absolutely.
Right.
I believe the applicant's contention is that basically only the professional certification is what's
Right.
voluntary
So
surrender.
I personally, just because I've had a couple of us have had some very exciting experiences with architects who have needed to have their filing and practicing privileges removed. I would like DOB to just verify that this architect is allowed to practice before the Department of Buildings and therefore us. But in the meantime, I note that they provided, as we requested, a DOB sprinkler and fire alarm sign-off, but I can't tell ever from those sign-offs, because this is a very large building. I can't tell whether the sign-off is for the whole building or a little place in the building.
Because there's so
or
many
this
different
site.
businesses and
Yeah.
different addresses, actually.
Right.
The address on the application that's signed off is not the same.
Oh.
But I think it might have been for the entire,
It depends on how it was filed. It will have the address of the filing, so maybe you should just cross-check to see if it's the same.
Right.
File.
So, but, you know, when we get these, you have to do something to tie it to the space. So that's why I keep asking, just show us sprinkler drawings, you know? And I don't know why that's so hard. They have them. Okay.
God bless you.
Pardon me.
New cases, item number 1, 213-14BZ, 165 Woolley Avenue, Staten Island.
This one, unfortunately, we have to
Postpone.
postpone the hearing because there was improper notice. So we'll schedule another hearing date after notice has been sent. We're expecting that proper notice will be sent prior to that time.
Item number 2, 219-14BZ, 64 DeGraw Street of Brooklyn. DeGraw Street, Brooklyn, I see that.
Sorry? What do you think? So we're, just a couple of things. We are waiting for DEP sign-off on the remedial action work plan and the PASP. I have a bunch of questions. Mine are, why are the bulk regulations of the R6B being used for bulk, while parking regulations of the R6A for the curb cut are being used? How come you get to mix and match like that? And in terms of the hardships, since there is a remedial action plan required, I'm just curious what the costs of environmental remediation are, whether that could be added to the hardships. And then I didn't really understand this. Why are pile load tests of other locations provided without explanation? And I didn't see soil boring logs for this site, but it's for like all these other sites, Sackett Street, Columbia, Carroll, Union, all these other places, and I don't know why. Was that to establish that this site it has an unusual condition, but I didn't see the boring logs for this site, so compared to what?
That also, just the presenting all of that information for other sites makes me question whether or not that's even a unique situation for this site.
Right.
So they
Right.
need to address that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That was just a very, don't submit stuff without telling us what it's for.
Yeah.
With respect to adjoining uses, what are the uses in the adjoining properties to the rear shown on the land use map as commercial, since they're the same dimensions as the subject? There's a lot of them. And the statement of fact says that a 12-foot curb cut is proposed, but the drawing shows a 10-foot cut. With respect to the financials, I know we try to hold things steady so that we don't confuse ourselves, but this is really, really old comps and old everything. The report was done in 2013 and uses 2012 and 13 numbers. It seems to me the whole marketplace has changed, so I think it should be updated. So I'm curious.
But that would be fine, actually, because as you said, those are old values that are used to establish the site value. So I'm fine with that, actually. But I just have another question, because part of their uniqueness is that they are one of the unattached, narrow vacant lots. But did they provide us a title report or anything to prove that they are actually owned separately apart? Mm-hmm. So they need to back up that portion.
Or deeds, at the very least, right?
Yeah, well, deed, title report.
I too had a question about the uniqueness of the area. Giving us all that information led me to believe that the area was not necessarily unique in terms of its soil conditions, so I was not convinced as yet. I also would like them to maybe flesh out a little bit more about why the site could not be used for conforming use. I mean, they do talk about, trucks and deliveries, but if you've ever been around there, it can be kind of bustling. So the question is could that be used for something that maybe doesn't necessarily require big trucks, but could be in conformance with an M district? That was an interesting building. I actually kind of like the building.
Yeah, no, the design's nice.
The design is very nice. But I just was concerned that they had not given me enough information as to why they could not do a building that would be in compliance and be successful.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of buildings like that are successful being used in that area.
Right.
It's actually a wider street than a lot of the other streets in the neighborhood because it's a two-way street and at least you have nothing opposite you except what's soon going to be some sort of park space.
I don't think it's going to be a
Greenway
park. I think right now where the Greenway, other parts will be, I think, landscape, but across from their site, it's an asphalt bike path and track.
That's what it's going to be.
So I don't know if there's any landscaping near them, and I really question this in terms of the C finding. It's really very manufacturing. It's across the street from an M2 district, which they didn't really discuss at all. There's like a commercial carter parking trucks over there and a lot of Port Authority container usage. And we did do 2 sites, but they were much closer to Columbia Street, which is a lot more residential. And I question the curb cut here because there's a lot of truck traffic, there's a lot of fast traffic, and nobody stops at that corner. They just come around the curve, and
It's
I
a
think
blind
that
spot.
it is. I mean, I made a U-turn there, and I almost got wiped.
That's why I did not make the U-turn there. I actually continued around and made it.
Wow, it's a blind curve, and nobody stops at the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
The trucks.
Kept on going.
Yes, there were trucks.
So,
Okay, so
and then,
there's-
in terms of the uniqueness, the narrowness of the site and the soil conditions seem pretty pervasive. Yeah, like
Right.
everybody
Yeah,
said.
Yeah. And you see around there, the types of little businesses that seem to use these small buildings are, like the guys who store the carts, like the hot dog carts and that kind of stuff. There's a need for those kinds of little
Right.
storage facilities or active storage, So I'm not sure. Sure, you'll make more money with a residential building, no question.
But I had a question about, this house is going to sell for $2 million at this location?
Sure.
It's like, whoa.
Welcome to New York, to Brooklyn.
But I thought it was interesting because I too was thinking $2 million, but isn't this being done by an organization?
Yeah, this is
that
the
actually-
same as the
passive
developer
house.
for the
That's
next
the
one.
next one. And, it seems to me that it might be almost sort of a demonstration, or if it's going to be sort of owner occupied, it might be actually used in terms of a great tax deduction. So,
A tax deduction?
well, if you use it as sort of a demonstration house and
Oh,
people coming
passive
in,
house?
taking a look at it.
Oh, it's because it's a
and you just
passive
happen to
house?
live there.
It's not a demonstration house. You know how many passive houses I looked at in Landmarks Commission? It was like a dime a dozen.
I don't know. This is a group that does this, so I just could imagine that one would, build a prototype and use it that way.
There already exists a prototype.
Not that passive.
No. Okay.
Item number 3, 22014BZ through 22114BZ, 8 and 10 Underhill Avenue, the Brooklyn.
Okay, with this one.
I was going to say the Bronx.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
It's the other one.
This one, we need a HASP and the DEP sign-offs on the HASP and a work plan. The statement of fact states that the site is used for parking. There's no C of O or other parking permit. I'm curious in connection with where it is parking. One reason I'm curious about this, in addition to the illegal use, is there's always this talk about used in connection with another use. So is this accessory parking to some other use, in which case this one is just like the others?
It looks like it's with the self-storage.
Right,
facility.
that's the question.
Right. And, it's true that it may be in different ownership, but it doesn't mean that it's not used in conjunction with. And then that makes me think, well, those lists that say it's used in conjunction with the other thing, that doesn't mean they're all in common ownership. That just means they have a deal with the adjoining business. So, right, so then this one feels like all the others, and that could be true of the earlier one we spoke of as well. But again, so this one, because there is environmental contamination, I'm wondering if the cost of the remediation is an issue, or whether it's so common to these areas that you really can't use it as a unique condition. For me, there was an inadequate explanation in any of the materials for why the lot coverage has to conform to the R6, cannot conform to the R6B. They should show a plan showing compliance with the lot coverage. It seems to me it would just be setting back a few, literally probably a foot from where it is now. And then just a request that when you provide Sanborn and zoning maps, show us where the subject site is, because it takes a while. You're wandering around the neighborhoods, and where is it, and the street names changed, and all that stuff. And then same comment about the financial data. I think it's stale and should be updated.
And they should also complete the financial report by providing the photos and the map for the residential homes that's sold in the area.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Go? No?
Okay. Item number 4, 23614 BZ, 106 East 57th Street, Manhattan.
Okay. This one actually goes to whether the board has the authority to even consider this application. On January 12th of this year, we sent a letter to the applicant stating that the board does not have the authority under ZR 73-261 to grant the proposed use of a PCE on a floor containing residence pursuant to the supplemental use regulations of ZR 32.
A restaurant.
It's a restaurant. I'm sorry,
PCE.
restaurant, sorry. Yes, yeah, restaurant, sorry. But the applicant apparently disagrees. However, ZR 3214, which lists use group 6 uses permitted in C5 zoning districts, states that eating and drinking establishments with entertainment but not dancing and fewer than 200 persons is only allowed pursuant to a 73-261 special permit. Section 7301 is very clear that it does not also grant BSA the authority to waive the supplemental use regulations of 32-422. Unlike what the applicant asserts, this is far from absurd thinking, as the supplementary use regulations are intended to protect residents from the nuisance and safety risks imposed by commercial uses located adjacent to or above residential uses. The caveat in 7301 with respect to the supplemental use regulations prevents BSA from thwarting such very necessary protections. The very findings for the special permit and in 7303, which do not consider the impact on adjacent uses within the building, proves that the supplementary use regulations were not to be waived. The reference to modification in that paragraph, which says the permit modifications of the use or bulk regulations of this resolution, states that such modifications are specified in the resolution. Modification of 32-422 is not among the specified modifications. And I just note as an aside that there seems to be a projection into the required rear yard at the second floor, which currently houses a fire stair for the restaurant. That's non-complying and probably is illegal. And that's all I have to say about that.
And so, Madam Chair, I believe you would ask the applicant to make a case tomorrow as to why the board has the authority, contrary to what you said today.
Okay, yes. Okay.
Item number 5, 18-15BZ, 95th Avenue, Manhattan.
So we need the fire department comments, we have Department of Investigation. My question is the building fully sprinklered? If so, we need proof. The plan of the 10th floor has an overlay code, a hatching, a shading, that seems to indicate that the locker area floors will be raised for acoustical separation, but the exercise areas won't be. I thought, well, maybe they're raising the floor because it's easier for plumbing, but that's not for acoustical separation. I didn't understand that at all. I note, though, that the really noisy activities are on the 11th floor above the PCE's own space, but there is only one small raised area on that floor. And I would like, they make reference to a lot of noise attenuation materials. I'd like the copies of the specs on that, so we can see what it is they're actually doing. And it is in an office building, so you have kind of less sensitive receptors there, but in any event, any kind of noise where you're working in an office and there's this constant banging and thudding, we want to eliminate it. Since they're proposing to raise the floor, I don't get why they're not raising it underneath the exercise area. Okay. Anybody else?
I wanted to know if they had any type of amplified music or amplified voice instruction.
Okay.
Item number 6, 6115BZ, 540 West 26th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, so this is the Avenue School, and then just some little housekeeping. We have a letter from DEC approving the remedial action plan, and we have a letter from DOT, and a response from the applicant from DOT, but also DOT requested that the applicant prepare a traffic safety, a safe route plan, and we're awaiting DOT sign off on the applicant's response to it. So I'll just go through my questions about use, about the proposal. I'm just curious, so for instance, looking at the plans, and this is in no particular order, just looking at the plans, I see that the elevators and fire stairs actually run through the entire building, and it's possible for, there is an elevator stop at the school level that also stops at the upper levels, and obviously ditto for the fire stairs. So I'm curious how you protect both the students from improperly getting on the elevator and going up to commercial floors, which would be so scary, and they're little kids, and how do you prevent adults from coming onto the school floor? So I would just like to hear, I know that there's ways to do it, and I want to hear what the ways are. I also like to know, how does drop-off and pickup coordinate of students, which is extensive, and not to mention other kinds of issues that are needed for school, like deliveries for school stuff, coordinate with the adjacent gallery and office uses in the same building, because that's potentially a lot of conflict with sort of kids on the street and lots of other things, and then all these pickups. I'd like to know how the children on the street are protected from adult commercial, pedestrian, and business traffic that's going on in the same building. So it's, again, this issue about the conflict of the kids on the street and all the school activities, buses and all that. The principal argument for the expansion to this location is that the existing school doesn't work, which is unfortunate because it was only built 4 years ago, or maybe even 3 years ago. they need to provide plans and class utilization rates of the existing school to establish that they actually have the need for this site. They don't have, provide us with any design standards for any of the classrooms, which is something that we normally get. So how do we know why are the classrooms the sizes that they are? I'm really confused about why they decided to have the little kids in this building and then the high school kids on the 5th floor for the STEAM program. For example, I know maybe it's kind of unusual, but it seems to me that you would have little kids in the 1st grade together so that they don't have to leave the building at all, and not the high school students who are going to be running across to the other building constantly. We have actually applications here by other schools that say that having the students have to shuttle between buildings is too disruptive and doesn't work. And so they come to us for variances to add more floors so that the kids don't have to shuttle between uses, and even uses like recreational uses, which are not, arguably core STEAM classes. So I'm imagining, having gone to school in the city, little school that didn't have much facility, I'm imagining it be a total drag where there's kids running back and forth in this manufacturing district all day long going between classes. To say that, they're only going to go there on Tuesdays or something, I don't think that's a realistic view, and they even did admit that the students would be going several times a day between the two schools. And then I question, with respect to that, perhaps what's really going on is their plan is ultimately to move the balance of the school or another big piece of the school to this building. And if that's the proposal, then talk to us about that, because why are you putting STEM classes for the high school up there if ultimately you're going to be expanding the lower school there? And then, in these applications, we always ask for a sort of programmatic need study to support the applicant's claim that the desired amount of space is not available in a conforming district and/or that the existing school building is inadequate. We don't have any of that. The projected utilization rates for the early learning center specialty rooms are very low. So sometimes as low as like 27%. So I don't understand why these are needed or why they can't be shared among age groups. That just seems kind of like fluff rooms. I don't get that. And I understand the concept that you're sort of reserving space for future use, but since we're talking about a 10-year projection, let's talk about a 10-year projection. What are these spaces really used for? With respect to the alternate site study, 210 11th Avenue at 108,000 square feet, and the proposed use is far less than that. Well, I'd like to understand whether the subject of the study search was only for sites with very large floor plates, like 20,000 square feet. It didn't say that in the study, and having gone to a school that was totally vertical, like in a little townhouse, you can certainly go to school vertically. I think the list should be more specific about what size spaces were available for lease-up or sale, not just the lot size or total building floor area, because it's not really relevant if if the whole building isn't available to rent. And with respect to cost issues, I'd like to know what kind of cost issues were dissuasive. And ditto for the timing, since this building isn't even built yet. And I know there's been a push on this application because the building's not even under construction. So, anybody else?
I had a question about the rear play area in the back, because there is residential uses. So I just wanted to know whether or not it would be appropriately screened from the residential so that they don't have to listen to the noise, and also whether or not it is lit, and what are the hours of use. And I agree with you as to the security of the students within the school, given the other uses that also share the core.
Right.
And I just had the question between the Department of Health and Department of Education guidelines. I know they say that you can have, if you have all the, additional grades, you follow the DOE guidelines, but I just wanted to, maybe they could speak a little bit about, why are they different for these young children, and how do they compare? Because it seemed to be a significant number of children in these rooms.
Yeah, it's a huge number of kids. It's become a very big school. I thought of it initially as like this charming little private school. I think they get
It's a big school.
already.
That was
Okay.
one of my issues, was that there's just a lot of children, a lot of activity, and I didn't
Yeah.
get a sense that the space was actually going to be able to handle it robust. Or maybe
That the
I'm just reading it
space or,
wrong.
wait,
Well, if you have so many kids, is this actually a viable amount of space?
then, yeah, okay. So that goes back to the guidelines, which we haven't been provided with.
Exactly.
Right, okay. And actually, when it's daycare programs, we have the benefit of having the Bureau of Child Care Services review the plans with us or for us, so that we can know that, okay, as far as those experts in child care planning have looked at it and signed off on it, and in this case, we don't have that benefit.
Right, but I don't understand, since, it's part of the same law and it's part of the same government, why one would be so restrictive, and then the DOE says, well, you don't have to follow that.
Right.
For the same children, same age children.
Yeah, yeah. Got it. Okay.
DOE is
Anybody else?
And DOB.
Right. Okay. Done?
This concludes the public review session for July 20th, 2015.
Took so little time, why did it take me so long to review?